I feel like I still haven't, but thank you. It's not easy. What's really not easy is that after we wrap a season, I go back to my life and I speak differently. And like
Teeter from Yellowstone is a magic trick in boots. If Jennifer Landon walked past you in Los Angeles, you'd clock a polished, natural blonde, not the neon pink ranch hand who talks like her words fought a barbed wire fence. That switch is not just hair dye, it's identity. So, what does Teeter from Yellowstone look like in real life? And how does the Teeter actress stay so unrecognizable in the Yellowstone cast? The visual deception. Red carpet versus the bunkhouse. In the bunkhouse, she's a hurricane of pink hair and denim. But on the red carpet, Jen Landon looks like she belongs in a Parisian fashion magazine. And that is the first, "Wait, that's her?" moment most people have when they finally see what Teeter from Yellowstone looks like in real life. Because Jennifer Landon does not walk around looking like she's been dragged through a cattle guard at sunrise. Off-screen, her vibe is cleaner, sleeker, and honestly kind of rock and roll in that California way. Think polished blonde, a neat bob, and outfits that look like they were chosen under good lighting, not in a bunkhouse mirror after a 12-hour ranch day. In one of the looks people still bring up, she shows up with her hair styled in a sleek, middle-part bob tucked behind her ears, and she keeps the makeup minimal, except for a bold lip. It's the kind of styling that makes you look expensive without screaming for attention. Now set that next to Teeter. Teeter's hair is loud on purpose, a DIY neon pink bob that feels like rebellion with scissors. Her face is often smudged, her clothes hang bigger, and her whole look says, "I've got work to do and no time for your opinions." Oversized shirts, denim, the practical mess of living outdoors, and that constant sense she's one argument away from suplexing somebody into a hay bale. The show designs Teeter to look like she belongs to the ranch, not the camera, and Jennifer Landon leans into that transformation so hard that people forget there's a completely different person underneath it. That's the deception. Teeter looks like a character someone invented, while Jennifer Landon looks like the person who could be cast as the character's stylish cousin in a totally different show. And the switch is not subtle. Here's a solid receipt you can casually drop in a group chat. Jennifer Landon was born on August 29, 1983, which makes her 42 years old right now. And she's around 5 feet 7 inches tall, so she has that camera-friendly height that reads leading lady, even when she's playing someone who lives in a bunkhouse. So why do so many viewers swear Teeter feels younger, rougher, almost feral in comparison? Because the styling on Yellowstone doesn't just change her hair and wardrobe. It changes your expectations. When you see Teeter, your brain files her under survivor. When you see Jennifer Landon at an event, your brain files her under celebrity. Same woman, 2 totally different folders. And her real lifestyle has been quietly evolving for years. She's had eras where she leaned moodier and edgier, then shifted into sleeker, more tailored looks, especially around her Yellowstone years. You see more menswear-inspired moments, suits, blazers, that polished confidence that says she knows exactly what she's doing and doesn't need glitter to prove it. Even when she goes bold, it's controlled bold, the kind of outfit that looks editorial instead of chaotic. Then you hear her speak, and the illusion really snaps. Teeter's voice is a whole separate costume. On the show, she's got that gritty, mangled, hard-to-decipher, "what did she just say?" dialect that becomes part of the joke and part of the charm. But Jennifer Landon in real interviews sounds natural and clear, with an articulate rhythm that feels nothing like Teeter's vocal gravel. That contrast is why the Teeter actress Jennifer Landon real life searches keep spiking. People are trying to reconcile the voice in their head with the face they're seeing. So let me ask you this. When you first saw her off-screen, did your brain accept it immediately, or did it fight you for a second? And can you believe she's 42, or does she read younger than Teeter to you? One more question, because this is where it gets fun. In the whole Yellowstone cast, Is Jennifer Landon the most unrecognizable transformation, or do you think someone else beats her? Because the hair and the wardrobe are only half the scam. The look is one thing, but Jen did something gross during her audition that basically locked the role in place. And once you hear what was actually in her mouth, you'll understand why the room couldn't forget her. The audition hack and the gum secret. When Jen Landon walked in to meet Taylor Sheridan, she wasn't alone. She brought a mouthful of chewing gum and a very specific plan to get dirty. Not Hollywood dirty, like smudged eyeliner and a ripped shirt. I mean the kind of dirt that tells a casting room, I can live in this character, even if it makes me look unflattering. Because here's the part people miss when they Google Teeter actress real life or Jennifer Landon Teeter without makeup. The transformation did not start with a wig or wardrobe. It started with psychology. Jen understood that Teeter isn't just pink hair and chaos. Teeter is posture. Teeter is weight. Teeter is the way somebody stands when they've spent years outside, bracing against wind, animals, and other people's nonsense. So before the audition, she didn't do the usual actor prep of just memorizing lines and hoping charisma carries it. She did something sneakier and honestly kind of brilliant. She studied photos of real female cowgirls and ranchers for hours, watching how they carried themselves, how their hips sat, how their shoulders rested, how their feet planted like they had roots. She wasn't copying outfits. She was copying physics. She wanted that "I've lifted things that could crush you" energy to show up in her body before she even spoke. And this is where the hack becomes almost unfair. Because if your body walks into a room looking like the character, you've already done half the acting without saying a word. Casting directors feel it instantly, even if they can't explain it. They just know this person is not pretending. She's arriving preloaded. Now, let's talk about the gum. Because this is the detail that sounds small until you realize it's the whole chess move. Teeter, as we meet her, has that chewing tobacco vibe baked in. That is part of the ranch texture. It's a choice that makes her feel like she belongs in the bunkhouse, not in a makeup chair. But Jen Landon has said she'd never used tobacco in her life, so she didn't walk in trying to fake something she had zero experience with. Instead, she stuffed her mouth with chewing gum to mimic a dip, so she could get the feel of talking around it without actually using tobacco. It's gross, it's funny, and it's exactly the kind of commitment that makes a creator like Sheridan look up and go, "Okay, who is this?" And she didn't stop there. She also wore a baseball cap in the audition, which sounds like nothing until you picture it. That one prop instantly pulls her out of actress walking in to read and into ranch hand who wandered in because somebody told her to show up. It's a tiny costume that changes the temperature of the room. This is the real behind-the-scenes truth. Teeter wasn't cast because Jen looked pretty. Teeter was cast because Jen was willing to look real. And real isn't always flattering. Real is awkward angles, sun damage, chapped lips, squinting into light, and that tough, braced stance like your body learned to be ready before your mind even catches up. That's why the contrast hits so hard when you see her outside the show. In interviews, she sounds like herself, clean and clear, and you can hear that she's not naturally Teeter at all. Teeter's accent is intentionally thick, and even the show acknowledges how hard she is to understand, while Jen's real voice is just normal. She's talked about how the dialogue for Teeter can look like gibberish on the page because it's written phonetically, and that alone tells you how engineered this character is. So when you put it together, the unrecognizable thing suddenly makes sense. The hair and wardrobe are the wrapper, but the real magic trick is that she built Teeter from the inside out. She adjusted her body, her mouth, her rhythm, and she let herself be the joke and the threat at the same time. Now, I want to throw this back to you, because this is where opinions get spicy. If you were an actor, how far would you go to look the part? Would you be willing to walk into a major audition looking ugly on purpose if you knew it would make the character iconic? And be honest, would you commit to that level of transformation for 5 seasons, knowing the internet would freeze frame your face in HD and judge you anyway? Because, as wild as the gum story is, the gum wasn't the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge was stepping onto a ranch at all. And that's where we go next, because there was a ghost in Jen's past that made walking into that world feel less like acting and more like facing something she'd avoided for years. The ghost of the frontier, confronting family trauma. Most fans know her father was the legendary Michael Landon, but few know that Jen spent decades avoiding the very thing that made him famous. And once you learn why, the whole Teeter transformation stops feeling like a fun costume switch and starts feeling like a personal dare she finally said yes to. Michael Landon is wholesome TV West for a lot of people. He's the face of Little House on the Prairie, the comfort show energy, the kind of star whose presence feels like a warm lamp in a living room. But for Jennifer Landon, that legacy wasn't just a rerun on cable. It was her real life. And it came with a loss that hit early and hard. Michael Landon died on July 1st, 1991, and Jennifer was only 7. Now, here's where the story turns into something most Teeter actress real-life posts barely touch. Because not long after her father died, Jennifer's connection to the Western world didn't fade gently. It snapped. According to reporting that pulls from her own recounting, her mom, Cindy, had a horrific horse accident when the family went to Arizona to buy a new horse. Cindy was thrown, her foot got stuck in the stirrup, and she was dragged around the arena. Jennifer has said her mom really shouldn't have survived it. Imagine that timing. Your father is gone, the house is still learning how to breathe again, and then the thing that once felt normal, horses, ranch life, that whole frontier vibe, turns into a nightmare in front of you. That's how you get a fear that isn't, "I don't like horses." That's a fear that lives in your body. It's the kind that makes your stomach drop before your brain can even explain why. And Jennifer didn't just get over it, she stepped away. She stopped riding. And for years, that part of her life stayed locked behind a mental gate with a big warning sign on it. So when we talk about how Teeter looks in real life, we also have to talk about what Teeter meant in real life. Because Teeter isn't just boots, denim, and pink hair. Teeter is horses. Teeter is ranch work. Teeter is the exact environment that used to be emotionally radioactive for her. That's why landing on the Yellowstone ranch wasn't just a new job, it was a confrontation. Think about it. She could have stayed in the safe zone of roles that never require a saddle. She already had her own lane in Hollywood. She didn't need to prove she could do cowgirl. But Teeter is not a character you can play from a distance. Teeter lives in the dust. Teeter moves like she belongs there. So if Jennifer said yes to this role, she was also saying yes to facing the thing she spent years dodging. And it gets even deeper when you remember who her father was in pop culture. Michael Landon's Western-adjacent legacy is often remembered as clean, moral, and family-friendly. Then Jennifer shows up in the Sheridan verse and gives us a dirtier version of the West, one that's sweatier, rougher, more chaotic, and way less polite. It's almost like she took the frontier her dad represented and dragged it into modern daylight to prove it can still bite. That contrast is why Teeter hits. Because Teeter isn't Hollywood cowgirl. Teeter is the girl who doesn't care if the camera likes her. Teeter is the person who would rather be respected than understood. And when Jennifer commits to that, she's not just acting against type. She's reclaiming a genre that her personal life had every reason to reject. Here's the wild part. She's described getting back on horses as healing, even while admitting the fear didn't magically disappear. She's talked about being afraid every day she gets on a horse, and still doing it, season after season, sometimes bonding with the horses by the end of filming. That's not a press line. That's a real human thing. Because courage usually isn't loud. It's often quiet, sweaty, and repetitive. Do you think Michael Landon would be proud of the dirty version of the West Jennifer helped create? The one where people fight, curse, bleed, and still somehow feel like family? And do you think it's possible to face your biggest fear just for a job? Or does it only count when it's something personal like family or love? Because if you look at it that way, Teeter stops being a punchline character with a funny voice. Teeter becomes a form of therapy with cameras. It's a controlled danger. It's a way to revisit the frontier that once scared her, but this time with a crew, a stunt team, and the power to say, cut. And speaking of that, we've been dancing around one more layer of the transformation, the one that makes Teeter feel like her own species. If the horses were terrifying, the voice was even more mysterious. So where exactly did that Teeter talk come from? And how did Jennifer Landon build a dialect that sounds like English got tossed in a blender and still came out iconic? Decoding the gibberish, the great-grandmother connection. If you need subtitles to understand Teeter, you're not alone. But the inspiration for that voice actually came from a mud house in the early 1900s. And once you hear that, Teeter talk stops sounding like chaos for comedy's sake and starts sounding like a living souvenir. Because yes, on the surface, Teeter's accent feels like English got tossed into a tumble dryer with gravel and came out kind of victorious. The ranch hands squint, the audience squints, and then somebody repeats what she said like they're translating an ancient scroll. That's the joke. But the real secret is how Jennifer Landon built that voice. It wasn't random, and it definitely wasn't, let me do a generic country accent and call it a day. Jen has explained that the script for Teeter is often written phonetically, basically spelled the way it's supposed to sound, which is both helpful and evil. Helpful because it guides you. Evil because now you're staring at lines that look like gibberish, and you still have to make them feel like a real human is speaking, not like you're reading a prank text from a cousin at 2 a.m. So the question became, how do you turn a phonetic mess into something that has a soul? Her answer was family. Not the famous family people always lead with, not the Michael Landon's daughter headline that follows her around like a shadow. This is older than Hollywood. Jen has talked about pulling inspiration from her own great-grandmother, a woman who lived a pioneer kind of life. The type of life where your environment shapes your speech, because nobody is polishing their vowels for a microphone. The detail that sticks is that her great-grandmother lived in a mud house, and that image alone tells you everything about the era. Hard life, practical life, the kind where language becomes quick and efficient because the day is already too long. So Teeter's voice became a tribute, not a gimmick. And that's where the Texarkana idea comes in, because Teeter's sound is not clean Texas or clean Arkansas, but something in the borderlands, a blended dialect that feels like it grew up near state lines and never cared to pick one. Teeter's accent hits like a cross-current. It pulls words together, chews them down, and spits them out with attitude. Meanwhile, Jennifer Landon in real life sounds way more polished, with a calmer, clearer rhythm that reads more California than Cattle Drive. That contrast is exactly why people look up Jennifer Landon real voice and Teeter accent explained after they binge an episode. They're trying to solve the illusion. And here's the part that makes it even smarter. Teeter's voice protects her. In the bunkhouse, she's the outsider, the new girl, the one they underestimate. A weird voice becomes armor. If they can't understand you, they can't control you. If they mock you, you already live outside their approval. That's power. And Jen plays it like she knows Teeter is in on the joke and still winning. So when you hear Teeter and think, what is she even saying? You're hearing layers. You're hearing an actor doing technical work with phonetic lines. You're hearing a character using sound as a weapon. and you're hearing a little echo of an ancestor who did not live in a world built for comfort. Be honest with me. Do you turn subtitles on when Teeter shows up? Or do you just ride the wave and hope your brain catches the important parts? And what is your favorite Teeterism from Yellowstone, the one line that made you pause and laugh because it sounded like a new language but still somehow made perfect sense? Because once you decode the voice, you realize Jen Landon didn't build Teeter like a normal TV character. She built her like folklore, a look that feels homemade, a voice that feels inherited, a stance that feels learned the hard way. And that's why Teeter is iconic, even if she's unrecognizable compared to Jennifer Landon in real life. Now, here's the twist that most people do not see coming. Jen doesn't just play a nomad on TV. When the cameras stop rolling, she leans into a kind of real-world simplicity that most Hollywood stars wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. So what does Jennifer Landon do when she's not Teeter? And why does it look a lot more like roaming than red carpets? The real-life nomad, living in a truck camper. While her co-stars might head to luxury hotels, Jen Landon's biggest financial investment is a massive truck and a camper she calls home. And the moment you hear that, Teeter stops feeling like a costume and starts feeling like a clue. Because after you decode the voice and you realize it's tied to real roots, you start asking the next question people don't ask out loud. What does Jennifer Landon do when nobody's watching? What does the Teeter actress do when the set wraps? The glam team disappears, and it's just her, the road, and whatever life feels like without a call sheet. This is where the real-life Teeter energy shows up in the most unexpected way. Not in a headline, not on a red carpet, but parked somewhere quiet with the engine cooling. Jen Landon has talked about choosing a truck camper lifestyle, specifically getting a Capri camper and pairing it with a serious truck capable of hauling it, not as a cute weekend thing, not as an influencer van life photo shoot, as an actual home base she could live in while working. And that choice is such a plot twist for Hollywood that it almost sounds fake until you see how it fits her personality. Because she wasn't doing it to look edgy. She framed it as freedom. She wanted to be able to move, to control her space, to not feel trapped in the usual cycle of hotels, rentals, packing, unpacking, and paying for comfort you never fully enjoy because you're always about to leave again. It's also a very Teeter thing to do, just with better hair. Teeter would absolutely choose a small, tough home she can take anywhere instead of letting anyone decide where she sleeps. And Jen, off-screen, is basically saying the same thing, just with calmer vowels and fewer threats. The truck camper becomes her personal bunker, her reset button, her little moving bubble where she can breathe after living inside a character who gets yelled at, misunderstood, and thrown into chaos for entertainment. And she doesn't do it alone. One of the sweetest details is that she's traveled with her bulldogs, which makes the whole thing feel less like a rugged stunt and more like actual life. There's something very human about a famous actress choosing me, my dogs, and the open road over the standard celebrity routine. So when people ask what Teeter from Yellowstone looks like in real life, the better question is, what does she live like in real life? Because Jen Landon's real-life lifestyle makes the Teeter transformation feel less like acting and more like a personality dial turned up. She can do elegant and polished when she wants, as you've seen in her red carpet looks and style shifts, but she also clearly likes a life that's mobile, practical, and a little bit feral in the best way. And think about the why here, because this is the hidden truth mainstream recaps usually skip. Acting can look glamorous, but a lot of it is waiting, traveling, living out of bags, and trying to stay sane while your life belongs to schedules you did not design. A truck camper is her way of taking power back. It's not just a purchase, it's a strategy, a way to keep herself grounded while working in places where her routine disappears. That's the real paradox. She plays a bunkhouse nomad on TV, then quietly chooses a version of nomad life off-screen, only with more control and less chaos. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Teeter is loud about freedom. Jen is quiet about it. Same core, different volume. So let me ask you, could you actually survive living in a truck camper for months at a time? Be real. Would you love the simplicity? Or would you miss the comforts by day 3? And does this feel like the ultimate real-life Teeter move to you? Or is it just smart, practical, and honestly kind of inspiring in a weird way? Because the road life detail is cool, but it also sets up something bigger. Teeter is iconic now, but no role lasts forever. And the next question is the one fans are about to care about the most. But what happens when the Yellowstone journey ends? The next moves Jen makes are going to prove she's not just Teeter from Yellowstone or Michael Landon's daughter. She's building a second act that has nothing to do with pink hair or bunkhouse chaos, and her 2026 plans are the hint hiding in plain sight. The Emmy-winning legacy and the 2026 future. Long before the pink hair, Jen Landon was a soap opera titan with a shelf full of Emmys, and her 2026 schedule is already looking legendary. Which is the funniest part about the way people talk about her online. Like she popped up out of nowhere as Teeter? No. Teeter is a late-season plot twist in a career that was already battle-tested in the hardest arena of all, daytime TV, where the cameras never stop rolling, and you either level up fast or get swallowed. If you want the real receipt, it's this. Jen didn't build her name by playing quiet background roles. She played Gwen Norbeck Munson on As the World Turns, and straight up dominated. She won 3 consecutive Daytime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Younger Actress. And that's not a participation trophy situation. That's a 3-year streak, the kind that only happens when the industry keeps looking at the ballot and going, yeah, it's still her. The wins came in 2006, 2007, and 2008. Back to back to back. So when Teeter shows up and steals scenes with a voice that sounds like it crawled out of barbed wire, remember that chaos is controlled. That's an Emmy-trained actor choosing to look messy because she knows exactly how to land a moment. And it also explains why her real-life vibe feels so different from Teeter's. A lot of actors who play gritty characters have to reach for it, like they're borrowing a jacket that doesn't fit. Jen's different. She can do polished, romantic, glamorous, clean dialogue, camera-ready tears, long emotional arcs, all the soap opera magic that keeps viewers loyal for years. Then she flips and becomes Teeter, a character who lives in dirt and miscommunication and somehow makes that just as emotionally real. That's not luck, that's the range. This is the part I love because it ties our whole Dutton evolution theme together. Jen Landon is a legacy shapeshifter. She's got the classic TV bloodline, yes. She's got the frontier ghosts, the family trauma, the horse fear she had to face, and the ancestor-inspired voice work. But she also has the old-school work ethic of someone who grew up in a world where your name opens the door, and your talent decides if you stay in the room. Teeter wasn't her beginning. Teeter was her reinvention, the watch me do something you didn't expect chapter. And now 2026 is basically her proving, again, that she refuses to be boxed in. Because the next move on her board is not another bunkhouse riot. She's set for a recurring role on Grey's Anatomy as Dr. Tony Wright, which is a totally different universe of energy. Think about the switch. 1 minute you're decoding Teeter talk in Montana dust, and the next you're in a surgical drama where every line is crisp, emotional, and precise. That's not just genre hopping. That's identity hopping. And then there's the film side. She's also connected to Brothers, which is another reminder that her career isn't parked in one place, even if she literally lives like a nomad when she wants to. It's almost poetic. She plays a drifter spirit on TV, and off-screen her resume keeps drifting too, but in the most strategic way. So let me ask you, because this is where the comments get good. Which version of Jen Landon do you prefer? The polished soap star who can carry big emotional scenes, or the pink-haired rebel who turns gibberish into a fan-favorite language? And when you look at her 2026 slate, what do you hope she does next? Lean deeper into drama, go full comedy, or take a totally unexpected role that breaks everyone's expectations again? So who is the real Jen Landon? She's proof that the most beautiful stories sometimes show up with a little dust on them, and she's rewritten what a Western icon can look like, from prairie legacy to nomadic rebel. What shocked you most, the truck camper life or the horse accident? Drop it in the comments, hit like, and subscribe.